Hello, it's Miss LaRose. This project video is for creating a flower vase collage. You will need paper, scissors, and glue for this project. Any type of paper will work. This paper that I'm using and folding in half is from my shaving cream printing video. So any paper that you have for this, I want you to fold it in half and then cut it on the crease. It doesn't have to be fancy paper. It can be any paper you have. Then what you're going to do with half of that is roll it up, and I like to kind of squeeze it a little bit once it's rolled up and then fold the ends so that it holds a curve, and these two sides here that are the ends are going to represent the back side of the vase. Next, I'm going to pick a paper for my background. I just chose solid white, and my vase paper is going to get glued on, and it's going to be glued on so that the vase pops up. I'm just putting little dots on these two tabs that I folded, and then I'm going to glue down one side, and I'm going to hold it in place and press it down so that it stays. And then I'm going to do the other side, but I'll have to stick my hand inside the vase shape from the bottom because it does pop up. And it's easier to press and hold it if you can stick your hand inside, but you might need to press it from the outside to reshape it. You can see it is 3D. The next part is to start making petals. Now I'm going to do a couple different styles of flowers. You don't have to do the same style of flower that I'm doing. You can mix and match your petals. You could choose different shapes. You could invent your own flowers. These are just some that I came up with. Go ahead and experiment with this. I'm going to cut these petals out, and then once they're all cut out, I'm going to arrange them into a flower on my project background. Now that they're all cut out, I'm going to shape and trim some of these flowers so that I can make little tabs on the bottom of them. And those tabs will allow me to put glue on the petal without it having to lay flat. So anytime you want something to be able to have a 3D pop-up sort of shape to it, always put like a little tab on the bottom of it, and then you can just glue the tab and fold the rest of the paper upward. So I'm going to put glue on these tabs and try to arrange them in sort of a circular pattern, like they go around the center of a flower. And I'm overlapping those petals just a little bit as I add them together and kind of bending them into a little bit of a curve shape as I glue them down. So you can see the overlapping right here, and I'm just pressing those two pieces together and adding all my other petals going around to create that classic center of the flower shape. After I finish these petals, I'm going to have to pick out a way to make the middle of the flower. Now you could just cut out a circle of another kind of paper and glue it right in the middle. If you have something like a button, you could glue a button in the middle. That could be kind of cool. Or any other round thing like a bottle cap might work. I am going to glue my petals in and then use paper to make a 3D pop-out center of this flower. For the center of this flower, I'm cutting a strip of black paper, could be any color, and then I'm going to roll it up around my thumb and make it into a spiral. And I want it to be a nice tight spiral so that that paper will hold a natural curl to it. Then I'm going to put glue on one end of that curve and glue it down in the center of the flower. Hold that in place and wrap the rest of the spiral down into the center and then glue the other end down, so then it will create sort of a little tangled bump of popping out paper in the center of that flower. And because it does have a little bit of tension caused by the curve that I put in the paper. It will want to come up off the paper, so I did have to hold this down really sturdy for longer than it shows in the video just to make it stay. I just cut out me holding it in place for a while. Last, I'm going to take a green colored pencil and draw on a stem and a leaf. It doesn't have to be colored pencil. You could also make the stem and leaf out of paper if you wanted to. You could draw it on with marker. I just wanted to use my colored pencils for this step. Go ahead, change the type of materials you use. If you want, you can add patterns to them, like I'm adding zigzags and veins to my leaf and my stem. And then I'm going to color it in with another tone of green just to create a little bit more of variety in my color and use lots of different types of greens. Just add a stem and a leaf in whichever way that you prefer. The next flower I'm creating is an iris flower. An iris has 4 big petals, 2 petals that go up and 2 petals that go off to the side. But from the view that I'm making it, we're not going to be able to see the petal that goes up in the front, just one of them, because they overlap. So I'm putting up my upward petal first, and then I'm going to use my scraps to make the 2 petals that go off to the side. So here I'm making a curving petal that goes off to the side, and that's going to overlap onto my first flower. And then I need to make another petal that's going to curve off and go to the side in the other direction. And flower petals can all be a little bit different, so this petal is slightly smaller than the other one. That's totally fine. Flowers are typically not entirely perfectly shaped. They have a little bit of variety to them. Now I'm just going to put on a stem, and this one's going to have lots of stripes in it. My last flower is going to use petals that kind of look like little clusters of hands or little fingers, and I want to make lots of these, so I decided to fold my paper in half so that I could have 2 pieces while only having to cut 1 time. And I'm going to make some of these that have larger clusters of petals and some that have smaller clusters of petals so that I can layer the small ones over top of the large ones. Now that I've made my little petal clusters, I'm going to just glue the bottom edge of the cluster down onto the paper, and that way I can fold up the tips of all of the little petals so that they will kind of curl outward and create more of a flower petal look to them. So I'm layering down the bigger petals first, and then I decided that it could use 1 more size petal, so I added in a set of smaller petals before pinching and curling all of the ends up on these petals. And you can see as I pinch and curl them up, they kind of start to look more like a real flower, and it adds that 3D element to this flower that the other flower and the vase have, and I think that makes it a little bit more interesting to look at. Now for this flower, I also wanted to make a center. For your flower centers, I want you to get creative. You don't have to do them exactly like me. I'm just making mine out of paper. You can make your flower center out of anything. This one, I'm putting on the stem first to let that dry a little bit up there. And If you can fit extra leaves in, go ahead. If you can lift up your petals and go behind them to make the overlapping more realistic, you can do that too. I think that since it's dry enough now, I'm going to just make the center for this one out of a little blob of paper, and I'm using yellow so it'll look like pollen. And it could be finished, or you could add more leaves. It's up to you.